Hello, this is part two of deriving inverse trigonometric function. So let's just continue on to example 6. So example 6 says find the derivative of f of x equals arctan of radical x. So what is the derivative of just regular arctan of x? It is just x prime over 1 plus x squared. So what is my x? My x is square root of x. What's x prime? It is 1 over 2 square root of x. Okay, so it's f prime of x equals to x prime, which is 1 over 2 square root of x over 1 plus x squared. So x squared is radical x squared. So that is x. And now we have a complex fraction. So this is your numerator. And this whole thing is your denominator. So let's rewrite this as 1 over 2 radical x divided by 1 plus x over 1. And then cross multiply. So this is 1 times 1 is 1. And then it's 2 radical x times 1 plus x. And this is it. This is the most simplified it can be. Okay, let's move on to example 7. Uh, this time, okay, so we have g of x equals arc sin of 3 of x over x. But we have a fraction, so what we need, right, we need to know the quotient rule so that if you forget it, it's this. Okay, and then what else do we know? We also need to know what is the derivative of regular arc sin of x. So let me write that out. So it equals to x prime over square root of 1 minus x squared. So let's start doing our derivative. So first I'm going to determine what's my f and my g. So my f is the numerator. So my f is arc sin of 3x. And then my g is the bottom, just regular x. So what is f prime? The derivative of arc sin of 3x, well, my x is not x, is 3x, and then x prime is 3. So it's x prime, which is 3, over square root of 1 minus x squared. So my x is 3x squared. That's 3 over square root of 1 minus 3x squared is 9x squared. Okay, so this is just regular f prime. And we said that g is x and then g prime is 1. Okay, we're going to use that because we're going to apply the quotient rule, right? So we said that, so it's f prime of g minus g prime of f all over g squared. So f prime is 3 square root of 1 minus 9x squared times it by regular g, which is x minus bracket g prime is 1, and f is arc sin of 3x all over g squared. So my g is x squared. So kind of clean this up. This times this, that's 3x square root of 1 minus 9x squared minus 1 times arc sin of 3x is just arc sin of 3x over 1. And then it's all over x squared. Okay. On the numerator, when we're subtracting fractions, we need an L. So let's simplify this part right here. So when we're subtracting fractions, we need an LCD. And my LCD is square root of 1 minus 9x squared, right? So over here, you're going to multiply top and bottom by 1 minus 9x squared. 1 minus 9x squared. Okay, so you get 3x minus arc sin of 3x times it by square root of 1 minus 9x squared over x squared. Oh wait, hold on. We have a complex fraction, right? So we were just simplifying the numerator, so it's all over the common denominator, which is square root of 1 minus 9x squared. And then on the bottom, our denominator is x squared. Okay, now we have a complex fraction. This whole thing is my numerator, and then this whole thing is my denominator. So what we could do is rewrite this as 3x minus arc sin of 3x times by square root of 1 minus 9x squared over square root of 1 minus 9x squared divided by x squared over 1. And then you cross multiply, so this is going to be 1 times that, that is 3x minus arc sin of 3x over, and then if you cross multiply this, it would be x squared square root of 1 minus 9x squared. Okay, so this is your final answer. This one was a kind of rough, long one. Okay, let's move on to example 8. Example 8 says we have h of x equals x squared times arctan of x. So on what do we need for example 8? We need the product rule, right? Because it's like this times this. And we need to know the derivative of arctan x. So product rule is f prime of g plus g prime of f. And then what would be our f? So wait, then what is the derivative of arc tan of x? Because we'll have to find that, right? So the derivative of arc tan x is x prime over 1 plus x squared. Okay, so well, we're definitely gonna use that. So let's first figure out our f and g. So my f is x squared. My f prime is 2x. My g is arc tan of x. My g prime is so we have to apply this rule. So the derivative x, so our x is x, and then x prime is 1. So it's 1 over 1 plus x squared. So our x is x, and then square that, that's x squared. Okay, then so h prime of x is f prime, which is 2x, times it by g, which is arc tan of x, plus g prime, which is 1 plus 1x squared, times it by f, which is x squared. So when you put it all together, you get 2x arc tan of x plus this times this is x squared over 1 plus x squared. Okay, that is your final answer. You don't have to simplify it, you could just leave it as this. Let's do example 9. We have h of t equals sin of arc cosine of t. So we kind of have to apply the product rule, right? I mean, not the product rule, the chain rule. So h prime of t. So chain rule is you take what is the derivative of regular sin? It is positive cosine. And then what you do is leave the parentheses alone. So leave this as arc cosine of t times it by the derivative of the inside. So what is the derivative of arc cosine? The derivative of arc cosine is negative t prime over or square root of 1 minus t squared or x squared is the same thing. So what is our t? Our t is t, so t prime is 1. And then you have a minus, so it's minus 1 over square root of 1 minus t squared. So that's just t squared. Okay, so the derivative of this is -1 of the inside parentheses is -1 over square root of 1 minus t squared. Now, do you see anything special about this? So remember, we said that arc is the same thing as cosine inverse. So you can think of it as cosine inverse of t. Now, what happens when you multiply cosine and a cosine inverse? It cancels. So you're just left with t times this whole thing. So that is going to be negative t over square root of 1 minus t squared. That's it. Okay, let's move on to example 10. So example 10, we have f of x equals arc sin of x plus arc cosine of x. So I don't think we need to we don't need to apply the product rule because this is actually one thing and this is one thing, right? But we do need to know the derivative arc sin and the derivative arc cosine x. So what is the derivative of that? So that's d of x equals arc sin of x is x prime over square root of 1 minus x squared. And then the derivative of arc cosine is negative x apostrophe over square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay, so let's just f prime of x is the derivative of arc sin of x is x prime. So our x is just x, and then x prime is just 1. So x prime is 1 over square root of 1 minus x squared plus the derivative arc cosine is negative x apostrophe. So our x is x, and then x prime is 1. So it's negative 1 because it's the negative x apostrophe over square root of 1 minus x squared. When you're adding, we're good with the denominator because they have the same denominator. So just add the numerator. What's 1 plus negative 1? 0 over square root of 1 minus x squared. And what happens when you have 0 on the top? It's just going to be 0. But if it was 0 on the bottom, it would be undefined. Okay, let's move on to example 11. Hold on. There we are. Okay, example 11, we have y equals x arc cosine of x minus square root of 1 minus x squared. So what do we need here? This part thing, this right here, is x times arc cosine x. So when you're when you have two different terms, when you're multiplying two different terms, you use the product rule. This one, kind of have to use the chain rule. So product rule is f prime of g plus g prime of f. And let's know what is also, we're probably going to need to know the derivative of arc cosine of x. So okay, so while I'm doing is taking the derivative of this first. So what's my f? My f is x. My g is this whole thing, right? So my f is x. My f prime is 1. My g is arc cosine of x. My g prime is, I kind of have to use this rule, so my x, so it's the derivative of x prime times by -1. So the derivative of x is 1, and then you have to bring down a minus over square root of 1 minus x squared. Okay, so we're still on this part. So let's apply the product rule. F prime is 1 times it by g, regular g, which is arc cosine of x, plus g prime, which is -1 over square root of 1 minus x squared, times it by regular f, which is x. So put this together, 1 times arc cosine is just arc cosine of x. Arc cosine of x, and then -1 times x is negative x over square root of 1 minus x squared. And then then it's minus, and then what's the derivative of this? The derivative of 1 minus x squared is 1 over 2 square root of 1 minus x squared times the derivative of the inside, because it's like chain rule. So the derivative of 1 minus x squared is -2x, and that's -2x over 2 square root of 1 minus x squared. The 2's cancel, so you're just left with -x over square root of 1 minus x squared. So it's minus x square root of 1 minus x squared. And then we know that 2 minus this becomes a positive. So what's positive x plus a negative x is 0. And then on the bottom, it's because we're adding fraction that we're good with the bottom because it's the same. So it's just 1 minus x squared. And then you know that 0 over a number is always going to be 0. Whoops. Okay, no, whoops. Just this part right here, this becomes 0. And then all we're left with is arc cosine x. So your final answer is y prime equals arc cosine x. Okay, go ahead and pause. And I think that wraps it up for this section. The next one will be quiz. Okay, thank you.